In this video, we're going to go through the process of giving our character all of the bones she'll need and binding the artwork to the bones. I'm going to start by right-clicking our main character layer and converting it to a bone group. Then I can just start drawing the bones with the Add Bone tool. I'm going to start from the hips and go up the spine. I forgot to add a root bone for moving the whole character around, but I can add that later. Then I'll just add the chain of bones for the legs. The feet are going to have 3 segments to go with the 3 main parts we built for the boots. Then I'll add in the arms. Now let's start binding layers to these bones so we can actually test out how they move. Let's start with the easy stuff. We know the head group, the braid group, and the back hair all need to be layer bound to the head bone. Now for the rest of the character, we'll need to do a little more guess and check to find the best way to bind things. For the arm, I'm pretty sure we just want the 3 layers of the sleeve to be flexi-bound to the 2 main bones of the arm. Then the hand switch, we can just layer bind to the hand bone. The wrist is hidden by the sleeve, so we wouldn't see that bend anyway. And I'll just do the other arm the same way. And then for the legs, for the time being, I'm just going to flexi-bind all the parts to all the leg bones. Right now, I just want to get every layer bound to something. Then let's get the bone strength under control for all these bones. I'm going to shrink them all down so they're within their corresponding artwork. Now, for the body, specifically the jacket, I want to make sure all the pieces, including the collar and the hidden parts of the jacket on the other side, get flexi-bound to all 3 of the main spinal bones. That will make sure the pieces get distorted in the same way and stay lined up. Oh, and it looks like we need to layer bind the hips to the hip bone. Okay, it looks like all the parts of the torso are staying together pretty well. Now I think her neck is long enough that I want to have 2 bones instead of 1, so it can actually bend. I'm going to use the Transform Bone tool to shorten the existing neck bone and add another one in. Then I need to use the Reparent Bone tool to make sure the segments are parented in a chain. Then I'm going to try flexi-binding the neck to the 2 bones. First I need to reset the binding on the neck, and then I can flexi-bind it to the neck bones. But I'm getting some distortion at the top and bottom. So let's use point binding to bind the base of the neck to the chest bone and the top of the neck to the head bone. Now that's pretty close. We can always fix the details with smart actions later. Now let's revisit the legs. I'm going to flexi-bind the thigh, shin, and knee layers to the thigh and shin bones. And then for the boot, I'm going to treat it kind of like how we did with the jacket and flexi-bind each piece to all 4 of the lower leg bones in the chain. And then let's make sure the belt is layer bound to the hip bone. And let's test out the arm. Okay, so when I move the arm, I can see the belt buckle and the front of the t-shirt must not have gotten bound. So I'll flexi-bind the bust layer to the 2 main bones of the spine. Then for the belt buckle, I'm just going to layer bind it to the hip bone. Okay, now we can move the arms without distorting anything. And we can move the spine. But I'm going to use point binding to make the bottom of the shirt stay attached to the hip behind the belt. Kind of like the shirt is tucked in. There, now that looks good. So for the elbows and knees, I'm going to want to set up smooth joints to get a better bend. But on this front arm, I think the upper arm bone and forearm bone aren't in line enough to do that. So I'm adjusting the bone and the artwork to make it start straighter. Now I'm going to need to rebind the sleeve. And with those two bones selected, I'm going to go to Bone, Create Smooth Joint for Bone Pair. Now this is important. You have to do that again for each layer that's bound to those two bones, or it won't look right. There, now that elbow bends pretty good. Then I just need to repeat that process to set up a smooth joint for the other elbow and the two knees. Now for the skirt, I'm going to attempt to point bind the different parts to different bones to try to make them move along with the legs. This might not end up working out once we try to apply our smart actions, but I'll give it a try for now. Now there's bones for every part of the body, except remember we want to rig the ponytail too. We aren't going to do it on the main character bone layer. We'll do it on the two groups we set up inside the braid switch. So I'll convert the braid dynamic group to a bone group, and then draw in some bones with the Add Bone tool. Then I'll switch to the braid sketch group and make that a bone group as well. Then with the Sketch Bones tool, I'll try to draw a chain of bones approximately the same size as the other ones I made. Okay, now back on the dynamic bone braid. I want to set up bone dynamics so that the ponytail will automatically animate as the character moves. But I need the character to be moving in order to test that. So now I do need to add in that main root bone to the character. And I just need to make sure the hip bone is parented to it. Now I can just make a quick animation of the character bouncing up and down. Now, back on the braid, I'll make sure those bones have names. And we better adjust their bone strength too. Then I'm going to enable bone dynamics on each of them. Now, if we play the timeline to test it out, we can see the default settings for the bone dynamics just don't work. The braid is way too stiff. After experimenting for a while, I found that the torque, spring, and damping settings all need to be brought down much lower, like in the 0.2 to 0.4 range. You can look at the project file to see the exact settings for each bone. But now we've got the braid bouncing pretty nicely. So now that the character has all her bones, we can move on to adding smart actions to those bones to make the bends look better. We'll do that in the next video. I'll see you there.